Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Tonight's film is Schoolgirl Report Volume 7. This is Schoolgirl Report Volume 7 with the tagline, "What the heart must thereby, dot, dot, dot." That's actually the official, I guess, tagline for Volume 7. And this is put out by Impulse Pictures, like all the other Schoolgirl Report films that I have, that have come out. I have reviewed all the other ones so far, and I'm slowly going through all of them. I believe there's 13 or 14 of them. And this is number 7. Please feel free to check out all my other Schoolgirl Report reviews before this one, 1 through 6, on this YouTube page. So tonight we're looking at 1974's 93-minute Schoolgirl Report Volume 7. Please look at the previous reviews if you want to know kind of the general gist of what these films are. But they are essentially German sexploitation focus fetish films on schoolgirls that also have a dose of reality and education mixed in with the erotica in these anthology formats with wraparound stories, which makes these films in their luridness and in their sexuality and in their taboo nature extremely interesting and erotic and very, very edgy films that would definitely not be made today for two reasons. Number one, the taboo nature of the storylines of these films, but number two, the complete lack of a need for these films in 2016, because just like I say in some of my other reviews for sexploitation films in general, these types of films would not be looked at as necessary in 2016 because of pornography on the internet and so on and so forth. Nobody would want to see this in-between world, and they'd say, why would I want to watch this when I could just see the real thing and much harder? Once again, this is a genre, as I've said many times before, that is extinct now in our modern times. People just want the top. They want the most extreme. They wanted hardcore. So when hardcore came in many regards, it was this, for lack of a better word, softcore sexploitation, in between R and X type vibe of these films that would become kind of extinct. But they are so interesting and so necessary and so beloved by so few. But I'm one of those people. Let's get into Volume 7 right here. This Volume 7 is wow. There's some changes in this film that I did not see in the previous 6 volumes so far. Wow, so interesting stuff here. Now I made some notes because this, by far, these are the most high maintenance films to talk about on the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, because they are anthology films, but they tend to be so complex in how many stories and the wraparound stories. So there's so many different things in each one of these films that you have to take notes, because I really want to kind of give you a gist of what each volume is dealing with, and the different storylines and things like that. First and foremost, we have this wraparound story in here of a court case, and the court case deals with a brothel, a prostitution ring. And so essentially we have this court case with the brothel owner and also the girls that work for him, the schoolgirls, the teen girls that work for him. And this is the wraparound story for this. So let's get into this a little bit here. First and foremost, I'm going to say, if you didn't already know, musically, this is awesome music in here for all of the Schoolgirl Report films, where we have music by Gert Wilden, who just did great 70s sexploitation, erotic, jazzy, funky, just really good, interesting, moody, and very sexy music. And the same title sequence for all the volumes so far, with the same main song. But this particular film really brings some more music in throughout the film than I thought in the other previous 6 volumes. We have some music that almost reminded me of some giallo scores, and we also have some kind of more playful, goofier music in certain sections of the film as well. So very interesting. This by far had the most diversity of music so far, looking at the first 7 volumes of this series. So that was really interesting, and there's a lot more music kind of in the forefront in this particular volume as well. Now, stylistically, it's very interesting because I thought that this volume so far out of the 7 volumes was the most stylistic. We really had some very interesting zooms in this film that almost reminded me of Jess Franco at times. And we also had a lot of mirror sequences, a lot of very interestingly shot mirror sequences. I mean, not as much as a Jess Franco film, but a good number of them kind of spread throughout the film. We also have a lot of very quick pans with the camera and a pan to a zoom. Lots of very interesting stylistic things going on in this film. It didn't look so much like a documentary, like especially the first couple Schoolgirl Report volumes, which definitely have much more of a documentary type format. This film was much more stylistic, much more cinematic in its feel and in its scope. Also, this particular film, and this is all subtitled, okay? This is all subtitled. The original films are German. This particular film also had the most vulgar language. As you're reading the subtitles, the most vulgar sexual language. Now, this is a series where sex is in the forefront. The fetish of and the topic of schoolgirls is in the forefront. But this film had the most vulgar language, the most sexual language, most explicitly sexual language out of any of the volumes so far that I found. But it was also aware of that fact, which I found very, very interesting and almost to a hilarious extent at times. A darkly humorous and almost an educationally humorous extent, and a wink and a nod to the times of the 70s as well. So, very, very interesting stuff like that. I'm going to get into a couple. I'm going to get into all the stories, and what I do is I don't give you spoilers, but what I do is I give you just kind of the essences of things, and then when you watch the volume, they'll develop, but it'll give you like a nice little taste. I never give spoilers in these things, as you know, but I will give you my feeling and the vibe, and just a couple of kind of the beginning facts, okay? So the first thing we have is one of the girls at the brothel is at the court, and she is kind of, she kind of kicks off one of the stories, and she's at the court, testifying and, trying to see if she's guilty or not. And she was one of the prostitutes at the brothel, and so she kind of talks a little bit about her history, and she talks about kind of her deflowering history and how she lost her virginity. And we have this kind of masturbation scene in a shower, and then we have some which turns into a sex scene, and we have her fingers like over her vagina in this particular section, kind of rubbing, but you're not seeing anything internal, if you know what I mean, and nothing really clinical like a Franco film or like a hardcore film. And we also have some in this particular story. Eventually, she kind of utilizes sex for homework, and there's so you kind of have this vibe here, and I thought that it was actually a pretty sexy scene in the shower, and then kind of masturbation turning into actual sex, and in the way that happens, and then this girl utilizing sex in conjunction with getting what she wants, in particular homework and things like that, and how her life kind of changes in this particular regards. This was a sexy story, and it was an interesting story. And it kicks off the stories, and it was definitely one of the sexier ones in a lot of regards, and you definitely see kind of just this wild streak of innocent to sexuality, but also in weird ways in regards to schoolwork. Okay, so some very interesting things going on there. We have a client at the court who talks to the girl's parents. Okay, in another scene here, and I'm in about an ice cream place, and kind of so now it's very interesting. We have like the court case, and then we have things happening at the courthouse, but like outside of the courtroom, and now we have other stories being told. So if you're really going to diagram these stories, it gets quite complex, actually. And they're talking about this ice cream place, and it's here that we have a character that we have seen in other Schoolgirl Report films. This guy who plays an Italian, a stereotypically outrageous Italian character, who's always brings a level of humor. And it's in this story that things really start to get wild and crazy. And it's an ice cream parlor, and this guy works with his wife, but he loves, as they say a couple times throughout this film, young meat. And in particular, he is interacting with these 3 schoolgirls in some very sexy, erotic, fetish type of ways at the ice cream shop, at a hotel, so on and so forth. And in exchange for free ice cream for the girls. The girls want free ice cream. The first story, they want their homework done, and this one, free ice cream. And this is a wild, zany, very sexy, a pretty erotic sex scene in here, but also there's some hilarity and fun in this particular one. There's a lot of old wife talk, like being married to your old wife versus the young meat. And there's talk in this particular one about the only thing that is immoral is having sex with more than one person at the same time. A very interesting thing, and it's actually repeated a couple times throughout this film, that the only thing that's immoral is having sex with more than one person. An orgy is immoral. So it's very interesting. And those are a couple of the areas of that second story there, and it gets really wild and crazy, and there's tons of nudity, male and female, but mostly female, full, totally full, but nothing explicit in the hardcore world. And we have this type of we have another girl and a random kind of another story being told, and this is a girl that you've seen pop up in a lot of the previous volumes, an actress, a lot of previous volumes, and these are all anonymous actors in these films, so their names are not in the credits because it's like real. And she tells a story, also she doesn't tell the story, adults outside of the court are telling the story about this girl, which involves hitchhiking and murder and crime and crazy twists, religion and young sexuality. Yes, all in the story. As a matter of fact, we have some religious themes running throughout this entire volume 7 and some very interesting things. But this one has some crazy twists and turns, some violence, and it really plays out almost like it could be its own exploitation film here from the 70s. We have we have another story here, also court conversations. And there's a kind of there's another story here being told where it's like an academic look at losing your virginity, and men and women are responsible for the hypocritical morality that controls love. And it's so interesting because you have kind of narration over some of these stories of the person who's telling the story mixed with the real conversations that's happening in the story. Okay, so this is really, really interesting stuff, but an academic look at deflowering first person from a schoolgirl. Really weird, really bizarre. We have a hilarious we have a hilarious story here where we have a brothel, the building owner, this older woman who tells a story involving a Prussian teacher and a naked sex ed rebellious class, and it really kind of shows kind of Bavarian versus the Prussian people, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So Bavaria versus Prussia, and kind of the looking at the Prussian people as kind of being like really kind of prudes, and it's a really funny and yet interesting and sexy story. And then we kind of end with this man's story about a student and a teacher and her mom, with the wildest sex scene I've seen so far in the Schoolgirl Report series. And this is a really interesting one because it involves, again, a student, teacher, and mom, and disguises and weird twists and turns and masturbation again. Essentially we have themes in this film that adults are guilty and youth are justified. We have topics of, the kids are being to blame and not the men with them. And then we have the church, and we have that craving of the young meat that's repeated throughout the film. This is a wild, it's a crazy film. I gave you some ideas of some of the stories. We have exploitation, sexploitation, some violence, some fun, almost feels like a teen sex comedy at times, and a full charge of eroticism. This is the Schoolgirl Report, Volume 7, and what the heart must thereby ... Here it is, folks. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like this one. Good night.